Hi, and welcome back to Solera Elevate's Blueprint podcast. We're excited today to have Jamie Getgood with us. He's coming to us from Australia. We are really appreciative because it's a different time of day there than it is here. Jamie has so much to offer because he's worked for some very large corporations. He's gotten huge accolades, and I'm going to let him tell you about those. But he's got a unique way of looking at technology and how it's changing the landscape, but doing it in a way that we really keep people first. So how are you today? What time?
I am in Australia. It's 2:30 a.m. But, US hours, most of my clients are in the US, so this is normal for me.
Thank you so much for being here. One of the things you and I talked about when we got to know each other is how being a people first leader can transform businesses, even in the crisis and the change that you've gone through. So you've had quite a bit of that. So would you like to share a little bit of that?
Absolutely. I've had a very, I'll call it unique background. Most of my career, I've been a HR leader in some very large corporates, and some of the big names are companies like Electrolux and ZF Lemforder. They're all in different manufacturing spaces. But probably the most notable was General Motors, or in Australia, the brand was Holden, but it was a General Motors facility. So I headed up the HR function for manufacturing in Australia, and we saw lots of change. And when I joined the organization, and without going too deep, we were not a business in Australia that was performing. So General Motors have 170 factories around the world, and we were in that bottom quartile. And that doesn't sound like a really cool place to be. And I ended up being brought into the organization, and I had some, I'll call it poor leadership experiences in my first week or two, where I could see very clearly part of the reason we were not performing was the way we were leading our people. And we then went on a journey where we basically said, we got to make people first. We've got to change the way we lead. In the past, it was all about the numbers of cars that went out the door. Now we're going to make it about people, and that should impact the numbers of cars going out the door. So it was just an absolute mindset shift. And interesting, because of my poor experience, I'll share a tiny bit. I had a very senior leader in the business call me some very nasty words. It wasn't a great start, and it was purely because I was challenging a thought process around how we were treating people, and he didn't like that. Anyway, part of the first thing we did was we actually exited some of the leaders out of our business that were just like that. And then we went on a journey of retraining our people. And it was little things like focusing on your people every morning. How do you meet them every morning? How do you greet them? What do you do? I taught them things about first impressions and body language. And I taught them that when you give someone a handshake, for example, you actually build more rapport from one handshake than up to 4 hours of continuous interaction. So why aren't you shaking people's hands when you meet them in the morning? So we did a whole host of things. And despite the environment and the performance of our business, within 18 months, we went from a bottom quartile business to a top 10 car plant.
It's amazing.
And absolutely incredible. And just when you think that's the end of the story, it's not. We're now performing, but then because of economic factors in Australia, we ended up having to announce closure. So Ford, General Motors and Toyota all announced closure because of the economic factors. Some people thought it was because of unions and people. It wasn't. It was economic. Now, we're a really good business now, but we're still impacted by this. So then the next 4 years, we gave our people 4 years notice. We built a world-class transition program. We put our people first. And as a result of that, the Australian government needed some help because their program wasn't probably going in the same direction as ours was. And the whole supply chain was closing as well because the industry was closing. So there was about 100,000 people that was going to be able to work. So I then helped on a number of task force to help the Australian government's program. And long story short, because we took care of our people on the journey, we ended up with our performance as a plant. We became the number one car plant in the world for General Motors for quality and performance in our last 9 months of building cars. So think about it, a closure environment, and you're now number one for quality and performance.
And most people that know that something like that is going to close and they're going to lose their job, they're going to start like giving less and less and less effort. And here your team was like, let's go out with a bang and be the best we can be. That's a testament.
Well, we knew there was this pride in our people. They loved what they did. So how do you help people understand? How do you help people on the journey and see that, hey, this is not the end for you? In fact, if we close this really well and make our last car the best car and really show the world who we are, you're all going to get the best jobs possible when you leave with us. And our transition program is going to give you the skill sets. So when you do transition, you're skilled, you've got the right skills on how to go through that transition process, and now you've got a reputation that is awesome. 90% of our workforce transitioned within 12 months.
That's
It's incredible.
an incredible statistic. And I would also say that employers probably got to meet some of the people that were coming out of your situation, realized, wait a minute, these are the kind of people we want. So came back time and again to hire more people, which is a testament to what you guys built and how you trained your people to transition. That's incredible.
We had some employers take, 10, 20, 30 people off us at a time because they not only were our people in the right mindset, we were incredible. We trained them really well. They had lean principles and they understood continuous improvement, and they brought in these skill sets that people wanted. And don't forget, when we transitioned them, they weren't going into other manufacturing jobs because there wasn't automotive manufacturing was closed. So some of these had to really reinvent themselves. We trained them. They went in all sorts of weird and wonderful directions. So it's not a standard transition.
No, but you were to GM, and then what a gift you were to the government. And then, as you and I both know, it's caused you to catapult yourself into now your own thing. So tell me a little bit about People Avenue and what that entails and what that's all about.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, look, I was grateful. I can't take all the credit. I had an amazing HR team. I had an amazing leadership
Sure.
team. But I did get some accolades. I got named Australian Leader of the Year. And
It's
that
incredible.
then allowed me to speak at conferences all around the world. From there, I got involved in a consultancy firm, but then I moved on again and got involved with a venture capital that was involved with mergers and acquisitions, but also ran an offshoring business. Long story short, I got some incredible experience there. 18 months ago, an opportunity came for us to start the People Avenue. And we've taken all of those skill sets from my past in HR and offshoring and the different areas in the staffing and recruiting world that we've learned, as well as marketing. So my partner is one of the best marketers you'll ever meet. So we've brought in all these skill sets, and now we have an offshoring company that is absolutely changing the game. And we provide incredible offshore talent, mainly from the Philippines, and they go into many US organizations and many Australian organizations. Obviously, it helps from a cost point of view. We're very cost effective, but we have such an amazing culture that our people thrive. We get comments whenever our people go into an organization. Wow, what do you give these guys? They're always on. They're always doing this, and they're outperforming some of these people, and they're just incredible. And I think our workforce and our Filipino workforce is incredible, but I think it's also because we've built the right cultural structure, the right leadership structure, and we want them to be the best, and we'll help coach and train and monitor them to be the best.
It isn't uncommon now to offshore some of your talent, simply because of the cost of things in the United States. But there are companies out there that offshore it and don't necessarily value the human being on the other end of that. So you do something different. What does People Avenue do?
Yeah, so one thing I learned on the offshoring journey is the companies that use our service or any offshoring service that get the best results are those that make the offshore team feel like their own. So we're really careful about when we onboard a person, how do we integrate them into their business? And we still coach and mentor and manage behind the scenes, but then we also do our own part in that space as well. The whole world's working on a remote basis now, but
Yeah.
we've forgotten little things that make a difference. And, when we used to work together, we used to handshake and we used to high five and we used to smile at each other. And some of that sounds really crazy, but with the world of Zoom and everything else, people don't always have their cameras on, or, it's a facade, or no one's really who they are. So how do you break down those barriers? So one of the things that we started learning was digital body language. That's right. So I think there's some really important areas we just need to consider. And how do we maximize someone that could be 3,000 miles away, 10,000 miles away in all these weird and wonderful locations? How do you get the best out of those people? And we think because they're so far away, we don't need to do all the cultural activities that we used to do. And maybe we don't need to talk to them so much. But it's actually the opposite. I think you actually need to invest more time and energy for a remote employee than what we did for someone that's live.
So what would you say, like, if you had to pick one thing that you do with your remote employees that you feel like makes the biggest impact? for them?
I don't think you can put it down to one thing. I think there's lots. Our leadership team has daily calls with our people, not weekly, daily, sometimes multiple times a day. And you've got to have the right communication channels. So there's constant banter and talk. You still have to do events to bring people together. So we have a lunch together virtually. All of our employees have a lunch every month, and it's corny and it's easy. And we play games literally once a month. I go and give everyone money for Jollibee or KFC and whatever the local takeaway, and we all eat together. We share stories, but we play games, and that's one activity. Or we'll run charity events in their area. It doesn't matter where they're located. We'll run charity events in their area, and there's different things, So there's pockets of the Philippines now that are actually getting a benefit from our workforce because we'll go into their suburbs and we'll help their area and give our employee the credit for what's happening in their area. So now all of a sudden the people feel purpose and our people feel valued because now they're not just making a difference in the company, they're making a difference in their community.
Yeah, that's huge.
So there's things you can do no matter the location. And yes, we're digitally aligned. We do all the things everyone else does, but it doesn't take that much more effort to actually get to know your people, understand their values, what's important to them, and then do things about it.
One of the things that I love is the fact that you do charity work in their specific community. That not only are you making them feel valued and their community is finding value in that person, but now you've got an employee that's going to be connected to you and to your company and to doing a much better job for a very long time because of the value that you've given them. So one of the pieces that Solera Elevate wants to highlight is it can make our business easier and stronger and better, but we don't want to do that to the tune of getting rid of the human touch, the human beings in our business world. So when you look ahead 5 years, what do you see and how do you see that People Avenue is going to continue to keep that human touch and not go in a lot of the ways that some companies will, sadly?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we are AI advocates. All of our
Mhm.
people are trained in AI. But it's interesting. We're in a world now where a lot of our clients are in the staffing and recruiting world, for example. And they're starting to see, and I was talking to someone the other day, they're starting to see all the resumes are starting to look the same
Oh,
because
yes, because everyone's just writing them with AI.
everyone's using AI. So we're using this human piece now. It's being lost. And it's the same with our people. Our people are all trained in AI. They use it to make themselves more efficient, and we want that. We want all of our work to be human-based and human-orientated because especially a big chunk of our business is offshore marketing. And also there's a growing sentiment that consumers are going, hey, we don't know what's real anymore. So we as a company are very conscious of that. So we want our output to be human focused and human led. So that for us is really important. But there's another element to this. I think the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago did a research study, and they were saying that in this new world of leadership, there are certain skill sets that we need to focus on. Yes, everyone's going to have some sort of technical skill that they're going to have to learn. And maybe it doesn't have to all be coding, but we're all going to have some sort of technical nous because AI is here and it's going to be here to stay. But the biggest gap they found was actually not the technical side, it was the soft skills. Because we are losing this humanity piece. We are losing how to connect with people. And it's funny now when some groups are trying to bring people back into offices and they've been working at home and they're working with AI, and
Oh,
now no
yeah,
one knows how to interact anymore.
correct.
So there's a leadership piece on soft skills. How do you get to know your people? How do you smile and release oxytocin to your brain and their
Right.
brain at the same time? How do we get someone so engaged because you've known them, you know their wife's names, their dog's names, their favorite football team, and the conversation, whether it be Zoom or live, is real because I now want to know about your dreams and your values. I want to know about what the issues in your community are so I can run a charity event. So we're using AI as a tool to make us better, but we want to use it to help us lead better as well. I want it to come from my heart, and I want my people to see my vulnerability, my transparency, my honesty, my integrity. And these are values that need to be there in the virtual world, not just the face-to-face world.
If employers and employees aren't people centered and people first, like you mentioned, and the leadership that's building in these companies is not doing the same like you are, then it's going to create some really not great work environments and not great jobs and all of that. So I love what you're doing, Jamie. Give me a blurb on like what People Avenue is, what you do in your business, and so how we can highlight that.
Absolutely. Well, People Avenue is a mission focused, people first offshore company. We provide world class talent to, for the most part, American and Australian companies, but we're growing outside of that realm now as well, and help them fix some of their challenges that they have, whether it be on the talent side or in particular marketing. We're helping dozens of companies now with social media and websites and content with that human flavor because of our incredible offshore team. They're super talented and we're getting rave reviews for their quality. But because we're offshore, we can absolutely compete, in fact, completely destroy some of the agency costs that some people are paying because we're nowhere near those costs. As a result of that, we've got companies coming to us and we've been rebranding companies and doing all sorts of incredible things on the marketing side. That's what we do. We make a difference in the offshore world.
I think you're making a huge difference. And my final question to you is 10 years ago, Jamie, if you could tell anything to help the person that's sitting where you were, what would that like one thing be to help them, whether it's the people first side to be successful? What would your biggest piece of advice be to that person?
Look, I think I've always had this heart for people focused leadership, partly because of my journey in HR and how that
Sure.
evolved. But I think there's different areas that every leader needs to actually go on. And for some, people focused leadership is where they need to start. For me back then, I probably could have spent more time on my overall business acumen. Um, and understanding finances is better than I do today. Understanding different parts about lean principles and quality improvement and things like that. And I was really blessed working for General Motors because I learned a lot of those things there.
Yeah.
But I now run my own business, and there's elements of that journey that I've had to really get my head around again. Going, "Whew, I wish I had done a little more of that in the past."
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one area. And I think, secondly, I think I probably would have invested more time on learning my technical skills. So my soft skills, I actually think I've done a lot of effort in building that. But probably that knowing what the future holds with AI and everything else, I would have invested more time on that technical side. And I definitely would have invested more in property because I've seen what's happening with property prices over the last 10 years.
Goodness. What I hear you saying there is that you 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 now know what your strengths are. If we're 80% great at one thing, it's a lot easier to get 100% great at that thing than it is to take our 10% knowledge to 100%. So I think with what you've done with People Avenue, you've clearly taken your 80% to 100. I think that you're going to be surprised 5 years from now to look back and say, wow, look at the seeds I planted and look at where they've grown and how they've grown. That's going to be an incredible journey for you. I'm excited for that too, because the more people we have that can believe in the truth, that's only going to be better for the world. Well, Jamie, I can't tell you what a pleasure this has been. And I have gratitude for you to just share this with us, with our viewers, and honestly, just with me personally, because this has been invaluable and really interesting. So thank you very much.